Hello, people of the internet. This video is about the concept, the idea, that the state is violence. And while I see what these people are trying to say when they use this piece of rhetoric, I don't think it's useful from a tactical point of view, and I'll explain why. Basically, there are many positive and social uses of violence. The obvious example that pops to mind for me is self-defense, but we could think of others. Perhaps it could be useful, social, positive to have a group of men armed with guns to go out into the world and further some social cause. This is generally what's called terrorism, but I mean, maybe it could be useful. This is a conversation that exists apart from government, is what I'm saying. Like, consider the example of eminent domain. Eminent domain is the act of using state power to take land from private individuals for the purposes of public causes. Many roads have been built this way. And I mean, maybe this is arguably a good thing, to use violence to take land to build roads. I don't know. Personally, I don't think so. I think there are other ways to build roads and infrastructure without violence. I think this has been demonstrated in the past, considering roads predated eminent domain. However, the conversation about the just use of violence exists apart from the state. The state itself is like a perversion of reality. It's a distortion of ethics. It's giving state power to the politically connected and creating a distortion of power between them and the rest of the people. That distortion of power is what kind of enables the politically connected to carry out terrorism and call it something else. Like, they carry out eminent domain, and they are able to call it eminent domain when it's really just theft. They're able to carry out taxation when it's really just theft. But there's a key thing to remember here, is that violence itself is not what characterizes the state. It's a distortion of the regularly practiced ethics around violence. Like, in normal human ethics, there's a huge discussion on what constitutes legitimate violence, and most people seem to think that it hovers around self-defense. Like, if you are using violence for defending yourself or your property or your loved ones, that's okay. But any other use of violence is wrong. That's terrorism. That's trying to impose your will on others. And if we want to change society, we should do so through art and political activism and dialogue and discussion. That seems to be pretty much the rational view on the legitimate use of violence. But when you create state power and this distortion of ethics, all of a sudden people can steal and murder and commit fraud and all of these other things to pursue their agenda or profit. And that's really what the state is. The state is a perversion of ethics. It's a distortion, and it's violently imposed monopoly. But the state is not violence. So yeah, I think it's much more useful to say the state is terrorism. I think that's a more specific way of saying what we're trying to say here. But yeah, I wanted to provide a critique of this piece of rhetoric.